Hello everyone. So today we're just going to pick up where we left off. On Thursday, I was working on the worker. So there was a bunch of sort of submodules that were getting handled with this. One was just the worker itself. So that was processing messages as they came in. That's relatively simple. So we can take a look at that. So here's all the workers doing. It sets itself up. Um, eventually, we'll do this part where we subscribe, and then it's handling events, and it just hands that off to the message processor. So then the message processor takes those arguments and processes each message, and then of all the ones that were successful, it's going to group them by what queue they belong to, and then it's going to then act those messages. So that's what's happening there. I was actually looking at, I had thought that the way I had set Conduit up, it would actually allow a subscriber to listen to multiple queues at the same time. That was wrong. And so this logic can actually be simplified here, because essentially each worker will only be listening to one queue at a time. And that means that this whole grouping by the message source is unnecessary, since there will only ever be one message source. So we're going to start off by fixing that sort of design flaw. Okay, so this group by was taking all the messages and grouping them by their source, and then generating this is essentially the thing that SQS needs to be able to delete a message. Now we can just change this to map, because we don't actually need to group it. We can get rid of this function call for what to group by, and now we just have the map call. So that's going to generate just a list of these sort of deletion tokens. The other place where I screwed that up is in the setup, I believe. Not here, actually. In the polar. Whenever we, or polar supervisor, I guess. Yeah, so I was thinking that this list here would be, sorry, this option from here would be a list. And so we'd have to map over all of these, but this is actually just a single value, so a binary. So we can just do this here. And we no longer need a flat map, because we're no longer returning a list there, so we don't need to flatten it. We'll just have a list of tuples for every subscribe that we have. And then the rest of this should generally be the same, I believe. Cool. Actually, so we'll need to fix the test. So let's start with that. All right, so we have a failure. That's in polar supervisor 16. Function is missing an end. Polar supervisor 16, this function has an end. It looks like we have a mismatch of parens, maybe. Yeah, here we go. So, all right. So in message processor 14, so this may be related to some changes that I made last time. So my computer crashed last time, and so I didn't actually. I think I was in the middle of running tests at the time, and so I may not have actually caught all the issues at that point. So here I need to import conduit message, and that's what's going to give us the get header function that's used here. And so that's what the complaint was about. So let's rerun that. All right, so we have quite a few failures. So let's just go through. Interesting. Let's just start at the bottom and see where we end up. So SQS 25 and SQS test 48. So let's look at SQS test 48 first. So this is asserting that when we call publish and we give it a message, that it's able to do everything. So, right. So since my computer crashed, I lost my shell, and previously I had sourced some environment variables. So I need to bring those back. So if I do that, then this should not complain. Cool. Okay, so message processor test, message processor test, message processor test, and so let's fix this one, and then we can go to the other stuff because that's what we'll be addressing next. So polar supervisor test. So this is actually wrong. We should really have from and then just a binary. So the reason that's the case is that if you wanted two queues to go to the same subscriber, you could just have two subscribe lines with the same subscriber and then say from that queue. And so that's why I never implemented list support here. It actually makes a lot of things simpler, so we'll do that there. So now that should change our test here. We should only be passing from this one here. And then this shouldn't be a list. This shouldn't be a list. And so we should just not have this one here. Cool. And so actually, I wonder now if there's only one from, is it really necessary that we split it out? Maybe just the polar should be aware of the from. Right here we could just do, so if we skip that and we just did subscribers with index, that would give us name, subscriber, ops. Well, do I want to leave it that way? Yeah, let's remove that dependency. Let's make just the polar aware of the from. So we will need to deal with this function signature down here. Yeah, I take it back again. I think that's what I want the API to be, that it just gets a queue with subscriber ops in the options. So yeah, let's leave it like that. So let's rerun our tests. Okay, cool. So we fixed that one. So now let's tackle these message processor test failures. So let's open this file, message processor test 82. So this fails. When processing produces an error, it produces a tuple with knack. So we have this subscribe with error from queue errorable, and this raises an exception. So that should be captured, and we should get a knack back. Actually, let's look at the mailbox. So it said that no message was matching this. So the mailbox actually returned an empty list. Interesting. Right. So one of the things that I had changed in the message processor was that I moved the filtering here. So now that's excluding everything that was knacked. So we should never get the API for this changed essentially, and so we should never receive anything that's knacked. We should basically just always get a list of these sort of delete handles whenever whenever a message is processed. So let's go back to that. Oops. Let's restore that. So right, we should really expect this as the result. So let's go back to this test. And let's also change the wording here. So when processing produces an error, it does not act the message. When processing a message produces an error, it does not act that message. So this should fix that case. We're going to run into the same thing here with the knack. So let's take that and just replace that. So when processing a message produces a knack, it does not act that message. And then for this one, so we really don't want to pass the axe down anymore. So that's basically what's not happening. So here we should get a list of ID and So I'm just going to do ID there, and actually I'll call that message ID. And then we should get receipt handle. Cool. And then we can also just assert that get header of message ID is equivalent to message ID, and the get header of message receipt handle like so. And then we're also going to set up those headers here. So we can put header message ID, and we're just going to give that something. And then we're going to do the same thing for Acable, or not Acable. We're going to do the same thing for receipt handle. And we'll just do the inverse of that. I like to pick different numbers for things so that if one of them fails, it's clear, oh, this was receipt handle. I don't have to look and really understand in depth which is which. So that should set everything up. So let's rerun these tests and see what happens. Cool. So we're in a good state now. So let's go ahead and add all of that, and let's check it in. So actually, let's look at the diff real quick. So we added message processor. We fixed the polar supervisor. We should check that in as a separate commit. We added a new method for acking messages, which is used by the message processor. And then we worked on the worker so that it would call the message processor to process those messages. And we added a test for message processor. We fixed the test for polar supervisor. And those are new tests. Okay. So I'm going to actually do 2 commits here. So I want to add all the polar stuff first and check that in. Cool. So let's add that. Oh, I just added everything again. So add that, and then check that in. So this is update polar to only accept binary for from. Okay, and then we can add everything else now. Add worker and message processing. Cool. It occurs to me that some of the other tests may be wrong as well. So the conduit SQS test, I define from here like that as well. So we should just make that consistent. so okay. All right, so that looks good. And then the setup test, let's just double check there's nothing there. All right, that looks fine. The polar supervisor we just fixed, so that's fine. And then the worker group supervisor, let's look at the test. So there we don't do it, and worker supervisor test, we're also not doing it there. Okay, so that looks good. So let's just rerun our test real quick. All right, so let's add that. Fix from to only pass binary. All right, so let's push all that up. Cool. So now, so there is something that I'm sort of avoiding, I think. So inside of SQS test, I started writing this. And the thing that's going to be tricky about this is that I need to actually publish some messages, pull them off, and then make sure that Act Messages is able to delete them. It's quite a lot of work for testing that. And so I think I'm going to keep putting it off right now. And maybe that's actually going to be an integration test for the entire library. So I'll actually test publishing messages while running the whole stack, and the consuming should work to pull the messages off, and then they should get act once they get processed. So I'm going to just get rid of that for now. Well, let's just put a comment. All right. So now that that's all happened, let's take a look at architecture again. Oops. There we go. So one thing that hasn't happened yet is that this line hasn't been drawn. And the thing that's going to help that line get drawn is actually the registry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up each of these polars to have a name that's sort of based off of their queue, I think, maybe. And then the worker is going to be able to subscribe to them because it's going to know essentially the queue that it's interested in listening for. And so that should allow all of this to work. So let's set up a registry. So if we go to our conduit SQS file, we're interested in adding another item here. We're going to add it first. It just makes sense that the registry would start up first. That way later we could use it in these. So I need to look up the docs for that though. So actually, let's do Elixir registry. Let's look at this guy. So First question I want to answer for myself is, should this be started as a worker or a supervisor? My guess would be a worker. Um, let's just do a quick search. Interesting. So uh, Starlink actually says that it's starting the registry as a supervisor process. So that means to me that I should specify it as a supervisor. Okay. So supervisor, registry, um, and then what options can we pass to the registry? So we can pass keys. So keys will want to be unique so that we can use via, and then we give it a name. So keys unique, and we can give it a name. So the name we're going to use, actually, should that be an argument to the registry itself? That seems odd to me. It's part of StartLink. Yeah, so the name we're going to give this is going to be based off of which broker Conduit SQS is started for. So presumably you could actually have multiple conduit brokers, and they could use different adapters if they wanted to, or they could use the same adapter. Um, and so we want to scope everything by the particular broker that we happen to be using. So this broker here is a module, and we can just define a function that we can use here, which will be registry name, and we can pass in the broker. And all we're going to do here is module.concat. Find that out complete. There we go. So module.concat, and then we can pass it a list of modules. So we're just going to pass broker here, and then registry. And so that's just going to generate a single thing. I can show you that in IUX actually. So if we do module.concat, our broker is going to be something like myapp.broker, and then registry, and then what we get back is just myapp.broker.registry. Cool. So that'll be a registry name, and we'll use that function here, and then pass in the broker. All right, then so keys, name. Are there any other options that we should be worried about passing here? Partitions. So there won't be enough subscribers here to really worry about partitions. Interesting. So one of the things it's saying here is that occasionally the the registry may return dead processes, and so you may need to check to see whether or not they're dead for handling them. So a thing that I'm interested in is, let's see. So first I need to register my process. So register is the current process under the given key in registry. A value to be associated with this registration must also be given. This value will be retrieved whenever dispatching or doing a key lookup. I'm not sure what that's for, because whenever I'm registering a process, I would expect to pass the registry, the key, and I would expect the value to be the PID, but this says it registers the current process. So it seems like it already knows what the current process is, so you don't have to pass self, for example. So what's an example where that's happening? So here it registers that with that key and that value, and huh, I mean, I guess that value can be anything, but it's not clear to me why that's valuable. Hmm. Um, yeah, that's not clear to me. Wait, is there a register without 3 values? Or is this over here? So there's only one register. Okay, well, we'll probably figure out why you pass something else to register at some point. Um, but it's definitely not clear to me right now. So what I'm going to do is, I think that's all we need for the registry. Um, so we're gonna, whenever we call start link uh, on the polar, here we want to also pass a name, so that this process can be looked up globally. And when we do that, we can, so I'm going to write pseudocode here because I don't know exactly what it is right now, and we'll double check that. But you can tell it to use a particular registry. So I'm going to want to use the registry that we named with the broker. So I can do just like conduit SQS, registry name, pass in broker, which I clearly need to pass down here now. And then, so this is a part I'm really not familiar with, but I believe I can pass the tuple with the name of this module. So it'll be polar here, and then I can use the Q. And that'll essentially be the name So it'll put it in that registry with that name. Let's break this to a new one. So let's just double check that I'm doing that correctly. Let's look at VIA. So that's that one's name. Right, and so then you can do name, VIA, registry, name of thing, and then some additional key. So that looks good. So I think I just need to pass on the broker so I can make that call. Let's actually do it this way. I like this being one line and just passing the name in. So we can do up here name equals that. So we have Q, we need broker. So let's work our way up. So I'm going to pass the broker in first. But we're not going to pass it down because we don't need it after that point. So let's look at the polar supervisor. And here we're going to need the broker as well. And then we want to pass it in as an option here, as an arg here. And now we can look at conduit SQS and make sure that we're passing it into the polar supervisor. So that's going to break all of our tests. Well, not all of them, but a good number of them. So let's just rerun those now. So syntax error, conduit SQS 17. Here, what? Syntax error before worker. Oh, I forgot to add a comma there. All right. So there's now a new child spec. Okay, so right, so it's just the registry first, and then we've changed something about this other one. So let's take that up to where is that finish? So this is the start link call up to here. So let's go to our conduit SQS test. Add that there. So we have registry. It's permanent. Yeah, okay. So that looks all right. Oh, for the start link here, I was passing a keyword list, and now it's still a keyword list, but uh, it's broken into sort of like the underlying implementation of keyword lists. Am I doing something wrong here by passing it this way? I suppose what I really want to do here is pass it like this. So that way it's a list of arguments. The first argument is keyword list. So then it should look like this. Get rid of that. And add another one there. So let's run that again. All right, so now they're almost completely equal, except that now broker is getting passed as the first argument for the polar supervisor. There we go. So that should fix that one. And then we'll come back to this one in just a second. Whenever I start to get long lists like this where I'm pattern matching against them, I start getting antsy and I like to break them out. So what we can do here is if we swap the order of these, oops. So if I assert that this equals child specs, so that'll be a pattern match, and then I can pull each of these out and name them. So I'm going to pull this out and call this registry supervisor. And then we can assert that that is equivalent. So let's do that, that, and then yeah. So that should make it a little bit more clear. Then the next one, we can do, what was that? That was the setup worker. So the benefit of doing this is that, so if we add something new to the list or we take something away, it still will fail on this test. But if something changes within one of these workers or supervisors, it'll only fail on this line. And so the stuff that it shows in the Elixir console for saying there was an error there will be much less than this giant mess. It'll just be some subset of that. And so it's a lot easier than to sort of visually parse out what the issue is. All right, so we've got that, that, and that. So this one is the polar supervisor. I have in the past also done things like sort this list by some attribute. In this particular case, though, I feel like that would be a bad thing to do because the order here matters. But sometimes you have stuff where the order isn't so important. And so it greatly simplifies the matching and makes it consistent. So if everything is alphabetical, for example, it always comes in the same order, and so you don't have to worry about your pattern matching, your visual pattern matching like it's the pattern failing you essentially. So what is it doing here? So this is one of the arguments. This is the next argument, and then this is the next argument after that. And then let's have that out. All right, and the last one. So this is the worker group supervisor. Like so. Alright, so now we should be able to rerun the test, and that should be fine. Cool. So now let's go to puller supervisor test. So we added a new argument, so this is going to fail because it's calling init1 with a list with 2 items in it. So we need to call this with args, where we include a broker. So we're just going to do broker here. One cool thing about Elixir, because I've done, I previously was pretty experienced in Ruby. I like being able to just use the name of a module, which is essentially just an atom, without that module having been defined as a module somewhere else. So it's super simple to, because they're both the same thing, to just use them wherever without having to worry about, oh, did I define this somewhere such that I can then use it? So now that we're passing the broker there, that's going to get passed as an arg, and then it's going to get passed down to the children here. So these guys should get broker. Actually, that's only used in the start link, right? Right, yeah, so it should be there. Broker and broker. So if we do that, we're green again. So here what we did was we named the pollers using a custom registry. Cool, let's push that up. Alright, so that's part of what we want to do. So we've essentially named, oops, oh no. Memory issue, or CPU issues again. Wow, this is failing spectacularly. Let me just check my phone. Cool. All right. So, all right, we're back. Let's see. So, right. So now we want to ensure that our workers also have a name. So the name that we give them, so that's not the name we give them. The name we give them is here. So we can do name, and we're going to do the same thing we did before. So we can use conduit SQS, registry name, pass it the broker, not the borker. name equals that. And now, oh, sorry, that's not the full name. We need to do via that, and then a tuple with the current module and the queue. Let's see. So I didn't pass the queue down here. What if we use the name instead? If we use the name, well, so one side has to pass the things down that it needs for that. But I think maybe the name would be better since this is an atom anyways. So yeah, let's do that. And here, well, yeah, we'll come back to that. So let's go back to the polar. So in order to name it after the name of the queue, we need that name. So we're going to, and we don't need to pass it beyond this because it doesn't need to be beyond here. So we need that name, and then we can use the name here. We're going to call that subscription name, just so to distinguish it from this name here. All right, and then let's go back to the polar supervisor. So here, we have the name here. So if we just change this to be that, and then pass the name here, that'll be an argument here. And then we can just pass it as an argument here. So we'll have to go back and fix the test for that, but that'll be fun. So now they're both using the name of the subscriber for the name of the subscription for their names. And so now in the worker, when it gets past the name, that comes, we have a conflict there as well. Here, let's just call it the subscription name. That way, this name doesn't conflict with that name when we're passing stuff through. Okay, so that looks good. So let's rerun our test with that. Okay, so just one failure. So polar supervisor test. And it's just that we're passing second argument there. So polar supervisor test. So this would be conduit SQS test 2, and then conduit SQS test. All right, we're green. Most of that. Otherwise, it's the same. Okay, so now what I want to do is handle this subscribe to. So our queues will only ever subscribe to our workers will never subscribe to one polar. And I believe I can use the same syntax I used for the name. So I can say via, and then using the registry, so via the registry, look up conduit SQS polar with the the name that we have here. And so that'll be the subscription name. So the benefit of this is that sorry, I just want to break this off into its own line. So the benefit of doing this is that this name is scoped to our particular broker. So we're guaranteed that we'll have a unique hit for this. If something else was reading from the same queue from some other broker, there would be no conflict because the registry is specific to this broker. All right. So I think that looks good. I just want to double check that. So subscribe to. Sync subscribe. Stage. So this is a form we're interested in replicating. So that's what we're doing there. So do we need any options? What option? Oh, well, we can just look at sync subscribe. So all right, so our options, we can pass cancel, permanent, transient, or temporary. On permanent, the consumer exits when the producer cancels or exits. So that means, okay, so if our polar exits, then our worker will also exit. So when transient, the consumer exits only if reason is not normal. And then shutdown. Oh, sorry. Is not normal shutdown or shutdown reason. Okay. And then when temporary, it never exits. In case of exits, the same reason is used to exit the consumer. In case of cancellations, I'm pretty sure I want permanent here. So if I have a polar that's pulling from some queue and the worker and that process dies, the worker should also, all the workers for that should also die. Yeah. So I think that's fine. So then min demand. So I should make that part configurable. Min demand and max demand. because I don't have an opinion on what those are set. That would just be the consumer of the library picking one of those. I wonder what the defaults for those are. And then any other option is sent to the producer stage. This may be used by dispatchers for custom configuration. For example, if a producer uses a GenStage broadcast dispatcher, an optional selector function that receives an event and returns a boolean limits the subscription to receiving only those events where the selector function returns a truthy value. Yeah, so I'm not worried about that one. So yeah, I believe I don't need to do anything for cancel because that's the default. So, alright, so I think that's actually pretty good. So let's run our tests and fix anything there, and then we can go through and set up a full integration test. So in the worker supervisor test, oh sorry, not there, in the worker test, this guy has to subscribe to with those options. So we're just, let's reword that. Subscribe workers to pollers. Okay. And actually, let's add a comment here, which will just be so pass empty options there, but to do make max demand and min demand configurable. Cool. Let's commit that as well. Okay. So next, let's build a full integration test. So, well, mostly full. Well, so the caveat here is that I don't really want it to run against SQS all the time. So I'm going to create a test that will run against SQS right now, but all the calls will get cached using XVCR. So let's just call this conduit SQS integration test.exs. Integration test. All right, and then we can use xunit case and async false. Since we're using a shared resource here, which is SQS, I want to make sure that this test runs by itself. Yeah. So what we're going to do here is really define a broker now. So let's do def module broker. And this is going to use conduit broker and we need to specify the OTP app. So this one I'm going to specify as different from the other one that's used in, where is that used actually? Somewhere I do this. So the conduit SQS test. Interesting. I actually don't need this one here. Let's get rid of that. And the subscriber, I don't need that either. So this will actually be just broker.registry there. And just broker there. I think that's right. And the other place I use it is in the message processor. So here I kind of need it. So I'm not going to do anything with that one. But essentially I want it to be separate from this one, so that's why I'm going to give it a different OTP app name. So let's just call this one conduit SQS. Actually, let's call it integration test. Alright. So we're interested in doing similar things that this is doing though, so I'm going to copy this part of it. So I don't need that. I do want to have a subscribe, and that's going to take, so I'm just going to call this subscriber from subscription and I need to fix this, so this should just be that. And then subscriber, we're going to do def module subscriber. Use conduit subscriber. And then we can do a def process message and ops we don't care about. And we can just return a message here. And then we're going to configure this. So let's go to our test config. So here we want to we basically want to do this, but for our integration test. So the app name won't be conduit here. It will be integration test. And then the module will be the name of our broker. So we can do, let's see, so conduit SQS integration test dot broker. So that'll allow our broker to find these settings. Oh, and we need to tell it what adapter to use. So we want our broker to use conduit SQS, so we can just do conduit SQS as our adapter. Now it should be set up to pick this up, use the adapter options to basically set itself up. So then in our test, where's our integration test? Here we go. What we're interested in seeing is we can publish a, actually, we should test that it sets up a queue for us. So let's do a queue, subscription, and let's see, I also want an outgoing block here. That doesn't need a module. And we're going to call it publish, sub, and then to subscription. I'm sure I'm forgetting options here, but this is the gist of it. Basically, we want to set up a queue, so that will be our setup process, creating the queue, our outgoing. So we're then going to publish something to the subscription queue, and then because we're running our broker, it's going to basically pull something from that queue and process it and then delete the message. So that's looking pretty good. Let me just do one check over here. Okay. Cool. So now we've set all that up. I'm remembering now, actually, there's going to be one thing missing we haven't set up yet. So if we look at architecture, I haven't done this line yet. So in the polar, whenever it starts up, I pass this demand accumulate option. And that means that it's not actually going to do any work yet. So I'm going to need to do something to signal from setup that, hey, I'm done setting up the queues. So now you can connect to them and actually pull the information that you're interested in pulling. So we'll have to do that. But we can set up this integration test and then use that as a sign that we've done that part correctly. But before that, I'm going to take a little break. I just need to use the bathroom real quick. Be back in a second. All right, we're back. So we're writing our integration test. So we can describe well, describe there. Let's just do test. It creates queue, publishes messages, and consumes them. All right, so we want to start up our broker. So we can do broker start link. I don't think it needs any options. I forget though. Let me just check one thing real quick. Actually, I'll do it on here. I'll check. Actually, no, it's not going to be on there either. Let's just go look at the library itself. So, oops. Conduit. Where's the dots? So modules, broker. Oh, right, that's just going to define it for us. All right. So it just defines a start link, optional options, which it passes through, but doesn't use them. Okay. That's fine. So we can just call start link here, and start link returns a PID. Is that all start links returns? I forget. Let's see, supervisor. Returns on start, which is OK PID. All right. So we can start our broker at the beginning of the test. Then, let's see, so that should create the queue. We can then use broker.publish. Oh, actually, here, we're also going to want it to do something to let us know that it made it to the subscriber. So we can send this a message with process message. So then we'll want to register the current process with that name. So we can do process.register and then self and then we can name it the current module name. So that way when we send to this process, it'll come back to our test process. So broker.publish. So here we're going to use this name. So we're going to publish to sub, and then we need to send it a message. So let's build a message real quick. So we're going to put body hi. And then actually that may be all we do right now. Let's just put this inside there. Okay. Now we just put message there, and we should receive at some point in time assert received, assert receive, process, and we'll call that consumed message. And one other thing, so we want to do all of this inside of a VCR so that we don't whenever this runs on like CI or whatever, it won't need any my brain's gone. It won't need any credentials to like talk to SQS, and it won't cost us anything. So let's use XVCR here. I'm almost certainly using that wrong. Let me just double check how I use it elsewhere. So I want to do this. So, and then we can do use cassette. Integration test. Do let me move all this inside of there. So a couple things I expect to get recorded into this VCR. One is the actual publish, or sorry, not publish, the setup of the queue. One is the publish, and then a couple polls of the queue, and then eventually a deletion from the queue. So let's see, what's the best way to ensure that we also get the deletion, and we can test that. I don't know. Well, let's just run this and see it fail. No, this is sort of a benign error. I don't really care about that. No, I must have broken another test elsewhere. So, where is this? This is in worker test. Line 9. So the init stuff. Subscribe to. Oh, right. I wrapped it in tuple and gave it a list. So, right, need to do that here as well. So that should fix that error. And now, what are we running into? So warning, undefined module attribute at xunit setup. Please remove access to xunit setup or explicitly set it before access. Integration test, line 17. Oh, not this one. Line 17 here. Oh, interesting. It thinks that that is set up for xunit. But I believe oh, it's configure. Configure there. So that should fix a problem. So couldn't find module conduit SQS integration test conduit. So it's doing that twice. So it thinks that let me do this right now. Because for some reason it seems to be thinking that it should be conduit SQS integration test dot subscriber, and then conduit is going to concat this with the value here, and that seems to be why it's doubling it up. So if I do this, that fixes that issue. So now I'm not importing the right things. And aliasing. Okay, so things compiled. That's good. All right, so we have a failure there. What's this failure though? Conduit SQS test 39. So 39 here. They got broker, conduit SQS test, and then oh, right. So because I got rid of the module, it's now just an atom. And so it doesn't prefix the parent module whenever It's just an atom. Oh, is this a different one? Yeah, so this is a later test. Okay, so that looks better. Pid is unused and consume message is unused. Yeah, that is true. So let's just assert that consumed message dot body equals hi. All right. So now we just have a failure. So polar supervisor, line 16. Anonymous function. Oh, interesting. So we just get sub and then the options. So it looks like we don't even get the subscriber here. We'll just get that, which is perfectly fine. We can deal with that. So let's rerun that. So since we changed that, we broke this test. So actually, yeah, let's go back through and fix that. So conduit SQS test. It seems like it should actually look like a list of tuples. List of tuples. So something like this. Get rid of that. So now that's going to change this to being a list of tuple. Okay. So let's rerun some tests with that. So I screwed something up on line 43. Oh, I forgot to change that one. So we still have two failures. Polar supervisor test. So this we should be passing in, should look like this. right? And then is that going to change anything here? Shouldn't. Cool. So that fixed that test. So now let's fix this issue. So undefined function, conduit broker, registry, where is name? Interesting. So it seems like our registry isn't started by the time all that other stuff is happening. Hmm. So I would have expected that to have finished by the time the other ones were starting up. Right, because we're starting this guy, we're giving it that name, and then these guys are running. So at that point they should be able to use this guy. But that seems to not be the case. I think we're going to have to do some more research around that before I can make any forward progress on it. So I guess, well, so I'm going to just mark that test pending for now. There is one other piece that I was interested in doing, which was signaling from the polar to the, um, signaling from setup to the polars, that it's okay for them to start. And also if those polars ever crash, them knowing that setup is already run so that um, they can just start subscribing immediately. So in order to do that, I was going to use an ETS table, and I was going to set that up as part of the just conduit SQS itself. Actually, let's do this. No doc on that, or doc loss. So let's look at the ETS docs. Actually, if Elixir's got docs on it, I'd probably rather read that. So I want to create a table. So this is similarly going to be named after the current broker that we've got. So let's just define a function here called create queue table. Oh, oops. I don't want to define the function here. Create queue table. We're going to pass in the broker. Broker. Then here we're going to do So we're going to create a new table, which is just going to be, we should give that table name. So we're going to do something similar. It's a registry name here, queue table name. Not always subject worker, and then return module.concat worker, and then just let's do queue table name. Okay. So now we want to create a new one. And let's also pop open this. Um, so ETS tables can also be named, allowing us to access them by a given name. This API is just a little bit weird. So let's look at new. So name is just an atom. And then options, we can say type, access, name table. I'm not super familiar with this style of doc. I think this literally means that options, so it's a list of option, and so I can pass in the atom name table here. Um, yeah, so I mean that's essentially what that's doing. Okay. So I do want it to be set. I want it to be so protected. I forget what that means exactly. So public, anybody, protected, the owner process can read and write to the table. Other processes can read only. And then only the owner process can read or write to the table. So I actually want it to be public in this case. And the reason is setup is going to write to the table and Polar is going to read from it. So let's call this named table. And the first argument should be, we can do broker, pipe that into queue table name. And then pipe that into ETS now. So set public name table. operation that mutates rights to the table obtains exclusive access, blocking any other concurrent access of the same table until finished. If set to true, the table is optimized to concurrent write access. Not sure I want that. Alright. I think I'm going to end the stream now, mainly just because I need to do a little bit more research before I move ahead here. So I'll probably pick this up again tomorrow. So look forward to that, probably about the same time, so probably 4 to 6-ish. So see you tomorrow.